My name is Suzanne Sesteta. 2 days after my wedding, I still felt like my body hadn't caught up with my life yet. The ceremony had been small on purpose. No spectacle, no performance. Just people we trusted, a quiet vow, and the strange relief that comes after something monumental finally settles. My boyfriend, now my husband, Daniel, and I came home that night carrying leftover containers and a shared exhaustion that felt earned. We kicked off our shoes at the door, folded laundry together, debated where the mugs should live. It was ordinary in the best way. Safe. That's why the knock didn't feel urgent. It felt confident. I opened the door to see my older sister, smiling like she'd already won something, and my father standing slightly behind her, hands clasped, eyes drifting anywhere but my face. He always did his damage that way, never direct, always through presence. "Hey," my sister said, too brightly, "we just wanted to swing by real quick." She stepped inside without waiting. "And Mom said you'd agree," she added casually, reaching into her bag. That sentence landed before anything else. Then she held out a stack of papers like it was a birthday card. So we went ahead and signed the house into my name. I looked down. My name wasn't there, not once. The estate, the one I'd inherited quietly, the one I never talked about, never flaunted, never even let myself feel proud of, was titled to her. Every page had signatures, dates, authority. "Mom said you'd agree," she repeated, slower this time, like saying it again made it real. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask how. I blinked once, looked at both of them and said, "I never said yes." Then I closed the door. I didn't stay long enough to hear if they knocked again. I didn't need to. I walked straight to the bedroom, opened my laptop, and sat on the edge of the bed with the kind of stillness that only comes when your body goes colder than your thoughts. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't change. I logged into the estate account, then the bank, then the title office portal, step by step. The security firm received an alert. So did the attorney I'd quietly kept on retainer long before the wedding. A formal clarification letter was sent that night. Calm, precise, legal. By morning, my phone buzzed with motion alerts. They were back. Standing outside the gate with boxes in their arms, eyes red, faces arranged into something that looked like regret but felt rehearsed. I watched through the security feed without moving. I didn't open the door, because in that moment something shifted. I wasn't shocked. Not really. I was disappointed, yes, but more than that, I was finished. I had come into this marriage believing that maybe now, finally, they'd respect the line between love and leverage. But this was proof they never saw a line at all. They didn't see me as a sister or a daughter. They saw a resource. They made their move. And I made mine. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying a single phrase. "Mom said you'd agree." 4 words. 4 detonators. I stared at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me, and one by one, the memories started lining up like evidence. Not logic, assumption, entitlement, manipulation dressed as family. When I was 12, I paid for pizza with my allowance because Dad forgot his wallet. He never paid me back. At 16, I helped my sister fake a project so she could graduate. She never said thank you. At 24, I took a second job to help Mom cover medical bills, only to find out half of it went to a spa retreat. And every time, I said nothing. I told myself that was just what you did for family, that someday they'd see it. They never did. They saw a pattern, a loophole, a system they could use. The first time I realized I was being used, not helped, not leaned on, but used, was during one of Dad's business downturns. I offered to reorganize his files to help him stay afloat. 3 weeks later, my name appeared on a loan application I never signed. When I confronted him, he laughed. "You've always had good credit," he said, like that explained everything. That night, I checked my own report. He'd used it 5 times, all unpaid. Then there was my sister asking for temporary access to one of my business tools. Said it was for freelance work. I gave it to her. She sold it. $600 to someone I'd never met. I found out only after I was locked out of my own dashboard. When I confronted her, she smiled. It was just sitting there, she said. You weren't using it. Just sitting there, like my money. Like my silence. Like my name on a deed they assumed they could erase. Daniel had asked me months before the wedding if I trusted them. I remember pausing too long before saying yes. You don't trust them, he'd said quietly. You just feel responsible for them. He was right. It all clicked at once. The jokes about me being the family wallet, the subtle cuts, the brunch where Mom laughed and said, "We're just trying to include you. You don't think you matter." And everyone laughed like it was clever. The house wasn't the betrayal. It was the final chess piece. They thought I wouldn't fight, that I'd fold like I always had. What they didn't realize was that the silence they mistook for weakness was actually the foundation of something far more dangerous. Awareness. I wasn't blind anymore. And I was done being their default yes. I didn't sleep. Daniel did, eventually. But my mind stayed awake, pacing, replaying, rewinding. That phrase kept looping like a scratched record. Mom said you'd agree. Not we talked about it. Not can we discuss this. Not even we assumed. Agree. As if consent were automatic. As if my silence had always meant permission. I stared at the ceiling while the house settled around us, listening to the quiet clicks and hums that only show up at night. Each sound felt louder than it should have, like my senses had sharpened now that something fundamental had snapped into place. I wasn't angry. That realization surprised me. Anger would have been easier, cleaner. Anger burns and fades. What I felt was colder, heavier, like finally seeing a picture come into focus after years of blur. That phrase hadn't started with the house. It had been used on me my entire life. When I was 8, I stood at the kitchen counter pretending to color while Mom whispered to Dad, "She won't say no. She's easy." I remember not understanding what that meant, only that it was said like a compliment. When I was 12, Dad forgot his wallet at the pizza place. I paid with my allowance because everyone was looking at me. No one ever mentioned paying me back. When I was 16, my sister panicked about a project she hadn't done. I stayed up all night fixing it for her. She graduated. I sat in the audience clapping while she took credit for work she didn't even remember. At 24, Mom cried about medical bills. I picked up a second job without telling anyone. Later, I found out half the money went to a spa weekend she desperately needed. Each time, I swallowed the discomfort. Each time, I told myself it was temporary, necessary, family. But they weren't seeing generosity. They were mapping it. I rolled onto my side and watched Daniel sleep. His breathing was slow, steady, peaceful. The contrast hurt more than the memories. He lived in a world where asking came before taking, where no wasn't betrayal, where love didn't feel like leverage. Months before the wedding, he'd asked me if I trusted my family. I'd paused too long. "You don't trust them," he'd said gently. "You feel responsible for them." I hadn't argued because I couldn't. Responsibility had been assigned to me early, quietly, permanently. I remembered the first time it crossed from expectation into exploitation. Dad's business had hit a downturn. I offered to help reorganize his financial files just to keep things afloat. I thought I was being helpful, supportive. 3 weeks later, my name showed up on a loan application I'd never signed. When I confronted him, he laughed. "You've always had good credit," he said, like that explained everything. That night, I pulled my own report. He'd used my identity 5 times. All unpaid, all temporary. Temporary had cost me years of cleanup. Then there was my sister asking for just a temporary login to one of my business platforms, said it was for freelance work. I gave it to her without thinking. She sold it. $600 to someone I'd never met. I found out only when I was locked out of my own dashboard. When I confronted her, she smiled like I was being dramatic. "It was just sitting there," she said. "You weren't using it." That line echoed now. You weren't using it. Like my money. Like my credit. Like my boundaries. like my name on the deed they'd already decided was hers. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake Daniel, and grabbed my phone. Not to call anyone, not to scroll. I opened my notes app and started listing dates, incidents, requests, misunderstandings. Every moment I'd been made to feel unreasonable for hesitating. Every time someone else had decided what I'd agree to. The list was longer than I expected. What hurt most wasn't the theft. It was the confidence, the certainty with which they acted. They hadn't worried I'd say no. They knew I wouldn't. Because I never had. The house wasn't the betrayal. It was the proof. Proof that they didn't see me as a daughter, or a sister, or even a person with agency. I was infrastructure. A walking account number. A default yes. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I wasn't 8 anymore, standing at the counter pretending not to hear. I wasn't the fixer, the helper, the backup plan. I was a woman who owned a deed. A woman who had quietly built a firewall around her future long before anyone noticed. A woman who had learned, slowly and painfully, how patterns form and how they collapse. They thought the signature meant they'd won, that I'd wake up, see the paperwork, and fold the way I always had. I didn't. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds, my decision was already made. I wasn't reacting. I was restructuring. By the time Daniel woke up, I was already dressed. Not dressed like I was going somewhere. Dressed like I was taking control. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, phone beside me, a legal pad filled with notes written so cleanly it almost looked rehearsed. It wasn't. It was clarity. The kind that only arrives after denial finally runs out. You didn't sleep, Daniel said quietly. No, I replied, but I figured it out. He didn't ask me what it was. He handed me a cup of coffee, glanced once at the screen, and nodded. That was how he supported me, by not interrupting my resolve with doubt. By 6 a.m., I was logged in. The dashboard looked almost calm. Financial summaries, title records, time-stamped access logs. It reminded me of a control center, silent, powerful, unforgiving. First move, the deed. I initiated a hard lock, not just legally, but digitally. Any attempt to alter, transfer, or access the property would now trigger an immediate alert routed through my attorney in a secured compliance channel. The title office confirmed within minutes. Second move, the trust. I'd set it up long before the engagement, after catching my sister digging through a drawer marked personal. At the time, she'd laughed it off. I hadn't. The trust was split 3 ways: estate upkeep, emergency reserves, and discretionary support. I revoked access to the discretionary portion. My attorney confirmed the change within 20 minutes. Then I went deeper, the phone plan they still used, under my name. I didn't cancel it. I reassigned ownership. They had 72 hours to accept the transfer or lose service. My father's car, registered under my name, a gift with conditions no one had bothered to read. I contacted the DMV, corrected the records, and scheduled a tow. Not out of spite, out of precision. They had launched a full assault on my boundaries. I was sealing the gates. By noon, revocation notices were out. Bank access frozen. Joint cards locked. My CPA confirmed. No signatures, but mine were valid from here on. At 2:13 p.m., I sent one message to my sister. You forged a future you were never entitled to. It ends today. Then I signed out. That night they came back. Boxes again, red eyes, softer voices. My sister stood closer to the gate this time, her confidence replaced with something rehearsed and fragile. We didn't mean anything by it, she said. Mom thought you'd be fine. You weren't even using the house. That line. You weren't even using the house. I opened the door just enough for them to see me, but not step inside. This isn't about the house, I said evenly. It's about how confident you were that I'd never say no. Dad stepped forward. Let's talk inside. No, I said. We talk here. My sister placed one box on the ground. We packed our things. We're sorry. I cut her off. Everything goes through the lawyers, she snapped. This is family. Exactly, I replied. And family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't assume ownership. Family doesn't erase someone and cry at the door when it fails. Silence. Then Dad tried what he always did. Minimize. You're overreacting. Nothing was taken. The title hasn't even gone through. You're right, I said, because I stopped it. That was the moment it hit them. The first time they realized I wasn't confused, or emotional, or bluffing. They had mistaken my silence for softness. They were wrong. The next morning, I finalized everything. 3 letters, 1 to the estate attorney, 1 to the title compliance division, 1 to the financial review board, flagging the entire attempt as potential fraud. Daniel reviewed them with me. They won't recover from this, he said quietly. I'm not expecting them to, I replied. By Thursday, every shared asset was gone, every shortcut removed, every assumption dismantled. But I wasn't finished. I contacted the foundation that had been covering part of my mother's medication through my referral. I rescinded the support, legally, formally, politely. The email was calm. The impact was not. That afternoon, I visited the property alone. The hallway where our childhood drawings once hung felt hollow now. I opened the security app, removed their access, changed the codes, and left through the front door. No drama. Just a reset. Then the calls started. 17 missed calls. 9 voicemails. I forwarded the first one to my lawyer and turned on airplane mode. At 3:04 p.m., they showed up again. This time, my sister was filming. Probably for social media. Dad stood with his arms crossed, jaw tight. "You can't do this to your family," she yelled. I opened the window. "I didn't do this," I said. "You did." Dad shouted back, "You think money makes you better? You owe us." Daniel stood behind me. "They think shouting equals power," he said. "They always have," I replied. By evening, the emails came. Mom's subject line: "Let's be reasonable." Preview: "It's not too late before lawyers get involved." It was already too late. Dad sent a PDF, a cease and desist. Claimed emotional harm and unlawful revocation. We responded with proof. Login records, documents, timestamps. Final line: "Your client has no claim." By Friday, the act dropped, and the collapse began. The silence didn't last. It never does when people lose control. By Saturday morning, my sister went live on social media. Red eyes, shaky voice, carefully angled camera. She spoke about betrayal, about being pushed out, about how money had changed me. She didn't mention forged documents. She didn't mention the deed. She cried just long enough to look wounded, not long enough to look unstable. The comments filled with sympathy. I didn't watch for comfort. I watched for mistakes. She made one. In a brief moment, she flipped the camera by accident. Behind her was my father's office, and in plain view, half pulled from a drawer, was a familiar binder, a thick one, labeled in my handwriting from years ago. Passwords, account recovery notes, old access points, the binder I'd removed last year. They didn't know that. My lawyer flagged it immediately. If they accessed anything, impersonated me, or attempted entry again, it crossed from civil to criminal. It didn't take long. Sunday afternoon, my bank flagged a login attempt from a device tied to my father's internet service. Minutes later, someone tried to access my trust dashboard. Everything locked. Reports filed. A cyber investigation triggered. At 10:27 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Mom, what have you done?" I didn't respond. By Monday, the narrative escalated. A cousin called, voice tight, saying Mom claimed I was tearing the family apart. I told her the truth. "I didn't break it," I said. "I turned on the lights." That night, my sister sent altered documents to relatives, cropped emails, rewritten timelines. But she missed the timestamp. We had the originals. Our lawyers sent a formal notice. Retract within 72 hours or we file. Dad texted next. "You're turning your back on blood," I replied once. "I'm stepping away from those who only took." The smear campaign spread. Vague posts, old photos, sympathy bait. So I ended it. I sent a 14-page PDF to everyone they'd involved. No commentary, no emotion. Just dates, documents, screenshots, and facts. 2 cousins replied within an hour. One forwarded a message my sister had sent them asking them to ignore anything I said. That went straight to legal. By Tuesday evening, the family's longtime accountant called. His voice was low. "They're cracking," he said. That night, Daniel and I released a public statement. Neutral, factual, verified. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. 11,000 views was enough to reach the right people. The next morning, silence. Then a voicemail from Mom. "We didn't know it would go this far," she said. "Please call." I didn't. Instead, I sent the final letter through legal. Cease and desist for defamation. Formal release of all prior support. Permanent boundary. No contact unless required by law. By evening, my sister deleted her posts. Dad went offline. Mom blocked me. I wasn't chasing peace. I was choosing truth with volume. They came one last time. No shouting, no boxes. Just Mom, standing alone at the gate, holding a photo album like a truce offering. She buzzed once. Daniel asked if he should come with me. "No," I said. "This one's mine." I stepped outside but didn't open the gate. Mom looked older, smaller. "We were wrong," she said, "but you made it cruel." I stayed quiet. She opened the album, flipping through baby pictures. First steps, birthday cakes, school photos. "You were always the good one," she said softly. "That's why you thought I'd never leave," I replied. She closed the album. "We just want things back." "They were never yours," I said. She tried again, voice breaking, eyes searching for guilt. I stopped her. "I didn't leave because of the house," I said calmly. "I left because you never saw me. Only what I gave." She blinked. "So that's it?" I nodded. "I'm stepping away to protect my peace." Then I turned around. I didn't look back. I walked inside, closed the door, and left her standing there, with an album full of memories she once used as leverage. This time, they didn't work.